what growing inside is, or growing spiritually is, in this, using this chart, is to master the process of being in the center as this unfolding and contraction is happening, as the death and rebirth is happening. To not freak out when we're dying, and not be overly excited when things are going well either. To stay more in the center, because it will change. And when we have had an awakening in this way, you know, that we have recognized something inside us that makes it clear that we are energy. When we felt some of this energy flow and some of the power of the silence that Davidji talked about, when we have an experience of that, then the next thing is, how do we hold on to that? How do we cultivate it? How do we allow it to develop further and further? How do we immerse ourselves in it? And there I like the analogy of a gardener, you know, which is you have to kind of relate to your own process as a gardener would relate. You know, you have to protect your own seed that has been planted in you by life itself. You know, when I was banging my head on the floor and asking for help, this was Shaktipat in a way that was working inside me before I had any idea what it was. But it was a deep sense of yearning towards an inner change of awareness and change of direction in my life. So the cultivation requires that we really, once we have awakened to a deeper state somewhat and had glimpses of it, that we protect it. Maybe you are not then able to go out getting dead drunk 3 times a week, if that's your habit, you know? Okay, that's something that you have to change. Not because it's immoral to, well, of course it's also very harmful to drink too much. I've experienced that myself from my family background, you know, alcoholism is not a very good thing. Whatever the patterns are that represents distraction and in a way holes in your bucket, you know, that lose energy for you, you have to correct them yourself. Not because it's anything morally wrong with anything, but because it's practically not good to lose all of your energy through distractions. Yeah? So it's really important as we look within to start to notice what do I spend energy on? What do I lose energy on? How do I gain more energy and more speed in my transformation process? And that's, you are the only one who can determine that. There's no do's or don'ts, you know, in any text that will tell you that, but you can feel the difference. And I have a lot of people who report, you know, yeah, you know, if I do this and if I don't practice for X number of days and I do all these other distracting things, then I just feel more stuck in my patterns, etc., etc. So cultivating this inner growth, transformation process, means that, you know, you have to nurture your own inner seed regularly. And that's just doing the practice with some regularity. When you're bringing your attention in here, you're basically feeding your deeper reality and asking for it to bloom. You know, this potential spiritual being that you are, or inner being. And it is very real that we develop that being, which in some ways, you know, you see it illustrated with a figure above your head, which is basically, you see that a lot in Taoism, for example, you know, there are some nice Taoist texts that describe that, how you create a being above yourself, a spiritual being, and then that energy creation has the potential of having a positive influence even when your body is gone. You can feel that when you go to Ganeshpuri, you can feel Nityananda's very, very subtle and fine vibration, because he did that. He created a subtle being independent of his physical body. Now, understanding exactly how that happens is not our job, but we can feel it. And it's really much better to feel when you leave this earth that you've created something that vibrates onward in a positive way. I mean, my poor father, you know, he died at 46 of cancer, and he was alcoholism, and he was weighed down by life. I mean, he came home from the hospital, I was 16, I had to carry him up and down the stairs every day from the 5th floor for the 3-4 weeks that it took him to die. And he was totally depressed, he was totally under and full of fear and so on. I don't blame him for that, you know, it had his reason. He was born out of wedlock, he was raised in an orphanage, he had all these historical, family, tragical, you know, he was adopted by a young couple when he was just a few years old, because they couldn't have any children. And then the couple discovered that when they got him, a couple of years later, they had a child anyway, and they had a daughter, and then they couldn't afford to keep both of them, so they sent him back to the orphanage. So he was, you know, he was really butchered. And the fact that he could, when I was a little boy, he was a lovely man. I mean, he had a lot of love in him, but he had this weight on him at the same time, you know? And so, to me, it's really so wonderful that we can free ourselves of these weights that have been placed on us. I mean, for me, it's very clear in a symbolic sense, because I literally carried him on my back, up and down. He wanted to have a beer out in the park, up until the last few days, and he went back to the hospital and died there. So, to really dissolve, even what he had could be dissolved, you know, with an inner practice. But he had no way of knowing, he had nothing like that. So it's not to blame anybody, but life is full of these kinds of things, and this is what we are trying to transcend through cultivating this inner practice. So it means, you know, really nourishing our inner self. The inner self that is independent of any of, I mean, my father, he was stuck in these outer rings, in these rings. He was stuck in the disappointment of his mother rejecting him and blah, blah, and all that, you know. And so, but cultivating, being your own gardener, and accepting that somebody can help you a little bit with that gardening, you know, this is a good thing. And it involves some pruning. Those of you who like to garden, you know that pruning is a very important thing. If you let everything grow wild, then you can easily become a twisted, weird tree, or bush, or whatever is natural for you. So this is also necessary to notice, you know, what really works for me, what supports me, what can I use in order to grow more in this. And fertilizer, we got plenty of fertilizer. And we all have a lot of it in ourselves that we can use. You know, everything that we can let go of becomes fertilizer. It gets transformed into an energy flow rather than keeping us stuck.